Right, so Dragon's Back Race, an online overview of day 2. We're still in a land of restrictions, travel restrictions, aren't we? And it's 1 year to the day, isn't it, that we've been experiencing life in this sort of context of COVID-19. So that is quite a marked day, isn't it? So yeah, just a thought for that and how much we've experienced gained and lost in this last year. So yeah, a challenging year for everyone, I'm sure, in many different ways. And really, thank you very much for joining me this evening. By this date, we would have had some live, on the ground recce events, but I've had to shelve a lot of those dates and kind of shift them forward into the spring and summer. And just here on the screen, we have a beautiful shot taken from the 2019 Dragon's Back Race. And this is a runner ascending Knicht, which is the first sort of checkpoint summit on your day 2 route. But moving on, just a very quick intro. My name's Kate, as I said, and I co-direct a mountain activities business in North Wales with my husband Ross. It's just a screenshot of our website. So website raw-adventures.co.uk if you need to find anything more about us. And we run a whole schedule of sort of mountain activities, events, skills courses, qualifications, guiding, and of course the official recce events for this edition of the Dragon's Back Race in 2021, and I'm forward planning to run them for the 2022 edition in September 22 as well. And as well as the one-day events that we offer for the Dragon's Back Race, for the recce's, we also run guided running sessions, guiding on the Welsh 3000s in Snowdonia, walking on Snowdon, other sort of mountain walks in the area, exploring and discovering the area. We teach mountain skills and navigation and sort of mountain training qualifications, and we also work in winter, offering kind of winter skills and winter walking and guiding in North Wales and Scotland. Although we haven't done much of that in the last year, it's all been quite quiet, but actually been really busy behind the scenes, and we're really excited to kind of kick off this year, like you, chomping at the bit to get back to the hills. And the official Dragon's Back recce events that we run, pretty simple concept. Get a group of like-minded folk together who are really enthused and excited about the Dragon's Back race. Either they've entered it or they're interested in entering it. Gather them together. We run over the routes in a kind of logical fashion, checking kind of the route against the map, familiarizing ourselves with the terrain, sharing knowledge, improving skills, confidence, and kind of sharing that with fellow runners that you may then meet in the race itself. So pretty simple concept, but really valuable. And I hope that folk that are booked onto recce events will really value them. And also, these are kind of guided recce events, but of course people will be organising their own kind of personal recces as well. So any time spent on the course, whether it's under your own steam or you've joined sort of an organised event that we're running, it's time well spent. Okay, and then just a quick reminder, you may have come across this information on our Raw Adventures website. This is just a snapshot from our information page about the Dragon's Back recce events, but I did initially want to offer kind of 2-day packages, which kind of bundle together accommodation and some transport, but due to sort of COVID restrictions and accommodation, we've had to bin that idea for this year, and we've moved back to kind of a standalone 1-day option for folk, which means that people can be a little bit more flexible and fluid with where they stay and how they accommodate themselves. because we are still in a world where we're not able to kind of share accommodation with, with people outside of our household, and Lord knows when that might be possible again. So anyone that's been booked onto some Recce events for quite some time now, thank you for bearing with us and the changes to plans and logistics and kind of rolling with that a little bit. So I do appreciate that very much. So on to the overview of day 2. So why day 2? Well, I covered a little bit about aspects of day 1 and Cribgoch, the ridge of Cribgoch on the Snowdon Massif in a previous session. So I thought I'd actually focus on day 2 in this one. So at this point, we've already done about 52k, 32 miles on day 1 and over 3,800 meters of ascent. So now we're on to day 2. Day 2 is described here, this little excerpt that I've got on the map. Southern Snowdonia has a special gnarliness, the Molwinian and the Rhenogydd. So the Molwinian and the Rhenogydd are 2 separate ranges of hills, if you like, that move down into South Snowdonia. So North Snowdonia is what you'd see in sort of day 1, and day 2 you're moving towards South Snowdonia. North Snowdonia, Snowdon, Tryfan, Cribgoch, the rocky summits that you may be familiar with from previous trips here, and day 2 probably entering grounds that you might be less familiar with, and certainly it's less travelled and not as busy. But as opposed to day 1, we've got a little bit more distance, so approximately 36 miles, 58 kilometers, and just slightly less ascent, 3,600 meters of ascent, but a really tough day, actually, and one that probably is a little bit blighted by the drama of day 1, and actually day 2 has got a lot going on in it. So let me just admit a few more folk. Brilliant. So the map. This is a copy of the map from the 2019 race, and some of you may have this. You've been able to purchase this, I believe, but you will be given a shiny new 2021 course map at registration, and it's made from a really nice waterproof tough paper, produced by Harvey Mountain Maps, and specially crafted for the Dragon's Back race, and it's a work of art. But I said it's waterproof, but it's not getting lost proof, as in this is very precious, and you don't want to be losing this. So if you can think of any ways in which to kind of keep this safe and handy or attached to you, some people use a map case, tucked into their running pack. That would be a good strategy, because you don't want to leave this on a rock on a mountain, or you don't want it blowing out your hand. It's really nicely designed so that each day is pretty much spread out on a section of mapping. So that's day 1, and it opens up like a little book, and then on to day 2. So day 2, as you can see on your screen there, it's on this one map section. So you can you'd be able to fold that onto the section that you want to view, and maybe fold it like a little square, so you can then view what you want to look at while you're running along, and maybe you tuck it into your pack, into your map case, whatever. So that's the look and the feel of the map. Anything that you can do to get yourselves familiar with Harvey Mountain mapping, the way they use symbols, colours, and their scale, how they depict, how far something is on the map. Get really used to that, because even if you're used to maybe using Ordnance Survey maps of different scales, Harvey mountain maps are another breed of mapping, and it takes a little while for your eyes to become accustomed to them sometimes. And just a point to note, if you've got one in your hand at the moment, or you're going to be looking at one very soon when you're out on the hill, 1 centimetre on this map is about 400 metres on the ground. So you can sort of quickly get a sense of sort of how big or how small things are. And the more you use that scale, the more you'll get kind of used to that. So you can kind of very roughly guesstimate distance by kind of measuring it out, which is really helpful when you're kind of planning how long it might take you to get somewhere. So it's a lovely product, and it'd be really exciting when you finally get our hands on the 2021 version. Something else to note on the map, there's always a space to write in the bad weather course, and in the morning we might be given a bad weather course that may deviate from the planned route, so you can write in our notes on the map. And also you'll see that the map is punctuated by ecological notes as well, and that's really important to kind of get a sense of those, in that there'll be a note to say, when you're moving through this certain area, like here, or higher up the mountain, what will you expect to see underfoot, and is there anything that we need to be considerate and careful of as we go through the terrain. So I'll just move my photos out so I can see here. Okay, so we've set off. Let me just go back. We've set off from day 2 start. There's a little uncertainty about the final location of the campsites that we'll be camping at the end of day 1, but roughly in this valley will be our campsite full of big blue tents, and we have a mandatory route to start with. First of all, mandatory route is a route that we all have to follow for a certain amount of time, and that's usually because of access issues, safety issues, and just to keep us runners all on the same route for a certain amount of time until we can branch off onto the open hill. And so the first ascent that we have on day 2 is up to this mountain here called Knicht, and initially it's on out of the campsite on kind of a mixture of track and road initially, but then branching out onto the hill, which is sort of now ascending here. A good path initially. You can see these kind of little flagstones down here. Behind us, you've got the view of Snowdon here, and the final checkpoint of day 1, Galto here. And that's a magnificent view behind you. We've left that now. That's day 1 gone, and now we are ascending. We've got about 600 meters of ascent from the campsite up to Knicht. Initially, good path, and then but it can become quite wet underfoot. Quite wet underfoot here. So we're now looking at the summit of Knicht. It's a really gloriously shaped peak, very beautiful. Unless it's really cloudy, you will see it from your ascent all the way up here. And then you can see you leave this black dotted line. This is a path that's sort of visible on the ground. So a Harvey's map will show black dotted lines on the map, and that means it's a path. You can see it on the ground, and it's pretty good to follow. But then you can see at this point we deviate from the path, and we're off kind of cross country, as it were, ascending Knicht. Not by, I would say, the most well-used route, but it is a used route, and there's a little track that follows this little line, this yellow line, and it ascends up steeply through grass and boulders, and finally some steep scree to this little notch here, and that's a great thing to sort of spy if you've got good visibility, and that's where we're aiming for. I mentioned about the ecological notes here. the information on the Harvey's map talks about montane habitat, so montane being sort of high mountain terrain, where you'll find kind of different grasses, heathers, and rock and scree. So something to be mindful of, not dislodging rock, not dislodging kind of vegetation on purpose, and also just being mindful of us and each other as we're kind of moving up this steeper ground. You can dislodge rocks. So just quiet feet and just moving up kind of really carefully and being aware of others. And it's quite a steep pull up there, a bit eroded, not overly pleasant, but perfectly doable. You know, it is a travelled little route, but it's just not a engineered trail like you've been on Snowdon, for example. And we've arrived at that little notch, and you sort of turn left up the hill, and there are definite kind of obvious ways to travel up this little ridge for a very short section before you get to the summit. And it's quite nice going. It's obviously it's ascending in height, but it's there's some scrambling and kind of big boulders to kind of scrabble over. So you're gaining height, but it's not like a weary trudge. So everyone's feeling kind of quite fit and athletic, hopefully, at this point in the morning. But it's a steep going, so just sort of taking it easy. There are kind of little ways to the sides and round the corners, but you'll mostly find that the way that is most used is the most logical, and the rocks are quite worn, and they're less vegetated. So it's better to keep in the grooves that kind of look obviously quite worn. And you can see here in this photo, you've got kind of heathers and bilberry growing on the rocks that are less well travelled. So it's better to stay off those and stay on the rock. So from the summit of Knicht, a very short lollop along a wonderful ridge before we actually descend quite steeply down, again, more soft grass, scree down here. I put this green line in just to show that this whole section of route, this yellow section of route here from checkpoint at Knicht, checkpoint 1 to checkpoint 2 at this mountain Molwyn Mawr, this yellow routing is only about 4 kilometres in distance, but it's quite sort of slow terrain. We're off of the harder pack trails that you might have found on Snowdon, and some of the other mountains that we travelled over on day 1. And here it's much softer. You can see the grass, it's grassy trods, not necessarily tracked paths. And this little section across here can be quite vague, certainly in sort of poor visibility. So this little section sort of around here where my cursor is. So I would, factor this in when you're kind of thinking about how long things are going to take you, or just the energy that you're going to use. So walking and running on this softer ground as opposed to kind of harder packed trails, it definitely takes more energy, and you'll find that the softer ground and the bog that you might find on these hills can really sap the legs. So don't be surprised if this takes longer than you might expect, if you're sort of measuring distances on the map. So a kind of steep grassy pull up to Molwyn Mawr, our second checkpoint of the day, and then some rocky descending. Actually, it sort of comes out the blue and you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting this. So quite a steep grassy descent off of here, and then this lovely ridge called Craig's which literally means sort of light coloured rock. It's got quartz bands running through this rock here. So yeah, we've got to keep our wits about us, because this is quite a kind of awkward, rocky, can't quite get running kind of descent. And then just as we come off of this little area here, you can see there's these sort of steps of rock down, and you have to jump down a few kind of corners of rock and ledges, and then some messy scree path, and then another sort of block of rocky steps and clambering down, bum sliding, bit of that going on as well. Nowhere is it particularly exposed or consequential in nature, like you've been on the day before on Tryfan and Crib Goch, but just takes a bit of care. So just slowly does it. And then a steep pull up again on a better track actually this time to Molwyn Bach. And actually it's quite nice to get onto a stony trail again actually. So this is a view taken from off of the race route completely actually, but this is the track up to Molwyn Bach. So you've descended steeply as we just talked about, and then a good obvious track up here, and then sort of nip round the corner to the checkpoint. So what this means most runners do is then come back on themselves, back down here, say hello to people passing on this path, which is a bit tricky because it's quite narrow and quite stony. So take care on there, but you might be able to see people that you recognise, which is quite nice. And then you kind of fly down this lovely grassy slope down here into a bit of wetness, especially if it's a wet day. Can be a bit wet and boggy in here, and we're heading down here towards the this reservoir with this great big huge dam here. Again, poor visibility can be a bit confusing in these areas because we're not on established tracks and trails. Can you see here underneath my cursor there's a red dotted line? On a Harvey's map, this red dotted line does indicate a public right of way, so a legal right of way that is identified in law, if nothing else, but it doesn't mean to say that there's a path on the ground. So that's the distinction between those red dotted lines and the black dotted lines. So here we're on a path. This is a right of way, but it's not overly clear on the ground. And this was from a Recce event in 2019, early 2019, and it was a pretty foul day. And we definitely had to sort of check compass bearings initially just to get us off the hill in the right sort of direction, because this area can be a bit vague. And then you do pick up kind of evidence of passage of feet down here, but if the people weren't there, the landscape isn't that clear sometimes. And again, where I've put my green line between the checkpoint at Molwyn Bach and the fourth checkpoint down here, which is at a stile over a railway, it's about 3 kilometers, and it's descending all the time. So you think, woohoo, I'm going downhill. It's actually quite annoying, quite slow, and sort of twisting in and out of sort of field boundaries, boulders, slippery grass. So that's definitely an area to kind of get your eye in on, I would say, because you don't want to be kind of hooning off into kind of randomness down here. It just kind of waste a lot of time. And that's looking back at the descent I was just talking about. So this area here, so this is taken from way off on the other side of the valley. So you've been over Molwyn Mawr, the rocky descent that I was talking about, up to Molwyn Bach, behind this little lump, down to the reservoir, and then the line generally sort of comes down, and then the railway line is behind that black line in the valley there. And let's hope that it looks like that in September, hey? So we've got to this checkpoint 4, a railway crossing, and here a really long section of mandatory route starts. And this keeps us on public rights of ways and lanes and road through the village of Mainturog. And it's fair to say that don't take your eye off the navigation as such, because you've still got some twists and turns along these roads. You don't want to be missing any junctions. But from Mainturog, this is all uphill. Oh, and it, you know, as in it's easier underfoot if people like running on road, but it is all uphill until you get to this sort of area of woodland, and that's sort of vaguely downhill again to this reservoir. Another checkpoint, crossing over a dam, and then actually you pick up an interesting little path that follows like a little leat, like a water that's been taken from the hill, and it's getting fed downhill ever so slightly to the reservoir. So that's a really quite runnable next to this. So you're on the mandatory route still until you break off up into your next range of hills called the Renault Hills. And this is the start of we're just on this slope here. We've ascended from the flat valley and we're starting up. So again, no path really. It's just sort of heading uphill in the direction that you've sort of ascertained you need to go in, but you do pick up a better trod just at the bottom of this map here. And there's Molwyn Bach all the way back there, which looks a very long way away. So the nature of this early set of the Renault Hills, the Renault Hills are a beautiful line of hills in South Snowdonia, and their northern half is sort of softer ground like this, lower in terrain, very undulating heather, grass, bog, a few sort of lakes and sort of small llynns, it's Welsh for lake, along the way. And as you can see, this yellow line, it traces a public right of way, those red dots. It's fairly clear on the ground, but it can cause confusion still. I would say in really poor visibility, you just want to have your eye on sort of a general sort of compass bearing, or direction of travel, just to make sure you don't kind of whiz off into sort of other valleys that you don't really need to be heading into. So not coming down here by mistake and making sure that you do turn off down, traveling south in a southerly direction. There's a little bit of more track to be found in this area, but I think that's more because people use the lakes for fishing. So there's a bit of a Land Rover track there. And then you just kind of break out into bog as you're traveling south. And you've got to kind of break over this ground and down at this sort of low point here into the valley for our support points at Cwmbuchen down here. And if you think about, so all of this, so ascending up to Chnicht, all of that ground between Chnicht, Molwyn Mawr, Molwyn Bach, the descent down to the valley, all through the valley at Mainturog and up again on. This is where, this is a challenge, and getting to this sort of support point in good time to, get your resupply bag and head out again. It is a tough one, I would say. And I'm not at this stage aware if there's any changes to these times. I do not know that. I'm going with that they're the same until I'm told otherwise, basically. So yeah, this was also taken from a Recce event back in 2019, and we had a whole mixed bag of weather on this day, even into snow. Once we'd got up to this peak, it was snowing and covered in snow. So it's a tough day for folk, but great eye on the ground to get a feel for what it was like. So we've come down, sort of grassy, rocky terrain, down into Cwmbuchen, a quiet valley accessed by a single track lane to our support point, where we'll meet our resupply bags, water on board, and there's medic resource should we need. No, we don't need. No, we won't need that. Yeah, about 18 miles 30 odd kilometers that we've covered at this point, and it's sort of a hard 18 miles, I would say, due to the nature of the terrain, the fact that we're off path for the majority of it, I would say, rough ground, some navigational challenges should it be particularly poor weather. So a tough half a day for sure. And then sort of more characteristics of the Renault Hills, that we're now moving further south into the higher peaks of the Rhynogedd, Rhynogfawr and Rhynogfach. Fawr means big in Welsh, and Fach means small. So big peak and small peak. This is quite typical of the terrain. This is coming off of Rhynogfawr. The photos I have around the summit of Rhynogfawr from our last Dragon's Back Recce were covered in snow, so that wasn't so clear and not particularly helpful for this set of slides. But we've descended down quite a steep, heathery, rocky way down here, quite awkward. And actually, this photo doesn't really tell us the steepness of it, actually. So that looks sort of shallower than it is, but certainly behind us in this photo, it has been much steeper. So a few bum slide moments, sort of picking your way down through heather and rock. Not a massively discernible path, and you're kind of crossing this this bulk, sort of a gap here, which is this here, before we head upwards. On look, a black dotted line even. That's nearly a path up here, because actually we're now into terrain that is used more by general walkers. So we will find a few more tracks amongst the heather in this area than we did further north, actually. So up into the clouds, hopefully not, up onto Rhynogfach. And let's go to a sunnier picture, because my Recce event pictures are always in the cloud. Oh, look at this! Look at this, beautiful. See, this is race day. This is photos from 2019. This is what it's going to be like in 21. So now we Rhynogfawr. So we've descended down the heathery rocky slope that I mentioned just now into that valley, and then up on better trails, up onto this scree slope, through boulders and scree, a stony path up onto Rhynogfach. And this, where you see the red line coming down following this wall, there's a pretty good track down here by the standards of the Rhynogedd. It's kind of stony and loose at times, but it's actually nearly a path, which is pretty good. And you've got this wall, sorry, I keep losing my cursor. You've got this wall line coming down here, which is quite a useful navigational feature should you need, but some better mountain shapes to navigate by now. So whereas further north on the Rhynogedd, it's all kind of a bit sort of lumpy, bumpy, not totally discernible. Now we have sort of proper sort of peaks and ridges and more defined mountain shapes. So you're either up or you're down and you're up again. So it's a little bit easier to keep track of where you are on the map. And the walls are marked on these Harvey maps as well, these solid grey lines. A little ecological note here. I mentioned those earlier. Travelling through sort of high montane heath and heather ground. So you can see here, this is sort of heather and bilberry. You might even find, September. So unless the sheep have eaten them, and actually there are less sheep grazing on the Rhynogedd because it's a national nature reserve. So you won't find any sheep grazing there. They're not, then there's no grazing of sheep up here, which is why we've got such a thicker growth of heather and bilberry and other flowers that we'll see. So it's a really lovely terrain, bit and different from the peaks in northern Snowdonia. A little bit more akin to some mountainous terrain in Scotland, some people say. They say it's like mini Scotland down here. And we're coming along here, and I would say that this wall that we're now following from this peak here, this is actually quite runnable, isn't it? Look at that lovely little trod there. That's actually someone running. So that's nice to know that after all of that slaving away over all these kind of rocky boulders and all that kind of grassy bog further north, there's some delightful running along this ridge, and up to last high checkpoint of the day, Diffwys up here, and it's another little out and back. So up to your checkpoint here, and then we come down saying hello to anyone else that we see on the hill before we sort of plop off, like literally plop off the end here. It's quite steep, so I'm now sort of down here, catch a final checkpoint, and then drop off this quite steep slope. And look, a black dotted line. It's actually a path. We do actually, because it's another kind of walker's route that's used quite often. I would say that up here is quite steep and annoying and a bit slow, and probably poles would be really useful because legs are tired now. So behind us in this photo is the steep section up here. This photo is taken about here as this levels out, and it's like a nice little, lovely little trail down through this heather boulders, sort of grass, and heading for a fence line and a crossing into this forestry area. And you hit, you know, actually that's a bit boggy and peaty and muddy through there, but then you hit a forestry track, woohoo! And that's like choo-choo, just kind of break on out of the forest, whether walking, jogging, or running your guts out, but you're escaping the Renogith down to the valley. And that's up here. Look, here we are. So escaping the Renogith. But look, another 6 miles or so of mandatory route. Orange mandatory route coming through here, forestry track, into actually a lane, runnable lane. Ouch, 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 my feet are really hurting now and my legs hate this tarmac, but it's getting us off the hill really quickly. Crossing an old toll bridge. There's a pub here, but no one told us that. And then a cycle track, really runnable, flat, lovely cycle track, road back into camp. And here we go. Day 2, finished, smiley face. What could be better? Oh, here, hang on.
We could see both. I could see Mike as well.
Oh, I can't see Mike. Brilliant, right. Let me go back. So here we are. Badil, Bo and Mike, proud finishers of the 2019 Dragons Back race. I missed your action of you finishing because I was probably still up on the hill somewhere, because in 2019 I was supporting the first response team, so I missed all the grand action at the finish line until the very last participants were coming in, and then I kind of ran back in with them. But so great to see you having crossed the line in photo only, and thank you for your time this evening just to answer some questions for the benefit of folk tuning in. And where have you put your baby dragon? This is the little trophy that the finishers received last year. Bo, where is your baby dragon?
Oh, it's on the bookshelf upstairs.
Mike, where is yours?
Mine's on my mantelpiece, so I can see it whenever I sit in my lounge. I actually got it right here.
Brilliant, brilliant. Proud owners. That's yay!
Little dragon.
And fantastic. So I've got a set of questions that I wanted to kind of go through with both Bo and Mike. So we'll kind of kick off. And Bo and Mike, they did receive these questions in advance. I haven't just totally sprung on them. So I really am grateful to your kind of thought on this one. So I'll go with Bo first of all. So I'll ask Bo same question, and I'll ask Mike, and then we'll kind of run through the questions like that. So Bo, yes. Before you entered the Dragon's Back race, how long had you been sort of generally running sort of slash training for before you entered, and what would be the kind of general activity background?
I was running for maybe 5 years at that point. So I only started running when I moved over to the UK. Before that, I played rugby, actually. Not sure if that helps at all. But you're just used to getting muddy. I guess that's the only thing that is a crossover.
Okay, yeah.
So I think when I just moved over to the UK, I saw a film about the Dragon's Back, and I was like, wow, I could never do that. Absolutely never. But I had just started trail running. So I guess my background was maybe 5 years of running and a couple of ultras, the longest being 50 miles.
And yeah, so no multi-day ultras at that point.
No, never done that.
And Mike, what about yourself? Sort of similar differences?
So similar probably in the length of time, but I guess I was more from like a hill walking and mountaineering background. So I've been doing that for kind of 10 or 12 years and kind of got into trail running from that. So I'd entered a few kind of mountain marathon events, a few trail runs, similar to Bo. Like the longest race I'd done before the Dragon's Back was 50 miles on the South Downs Way. So it was a pretty big step up for me.
And so no multi-days prior to the Dragon's Back race, in that sense, in a race sense.
No.
Fantastic. Okay. Oh, look, this is I just wanted to flip through this question. So we had this. This is Mike here on the Renault Hills, on day 2. Look, there's a path. There you go. That's a path. I think this is, or possibly going up to Ecological. Maybe I might be wrong there. I don't know. Looks like
I think so, yeah.
And here's Bo on what can only be Crib Goch on day 1.
It definitely is, yeah.
You're looking very relaxed there, Bo.
Yeah, well, I'd done it a couple of times by that point, and it was such sunny weather. I'd never actually seen the drop of Crib Goch. I'd only ever done it in the cloud. So I was like, wow, this is so different. Actually, maybe scarier.
I was going to say, what did you prefer, cloud or clear?
Clear, because it's dry rock, and that definitely is more grippy. But the cloud is better for vertigo.
Brilliant. Okie dokie. So, what to Bo, what aspect of training did you focus on most while preparing for your event?
I think a combination of distance and ascent, and I had like a little, I'm really geeky, I had like a little calculator that if I would run so and so much ascent during a run, then it would count for an extra kilometer in my training plan, so that I would be motivated to run more ascent and not just distance. I did a similar kind of like little calculation if I wanted to do bike rides and do some more sort of like low impact volume in my training. Yeah. So I guess it was really about just about 7 to 3 months before the race. It was really about all of that volume, and then I started doing recce's.
Yeah. Okay. So when in terms of what time of year did you build in the most amount of training? So, the race being in May when you guys did it.
Yeah, it was like October to January.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the recce time, that would have been at the beginning of the year of the race, so early 19.
Yeah, I was one of those team beings who straight away signed up in May when the entries opened. So yeah, I did quite a few recce's over the summer, and then I kind of trailed off around November, December time because work got really, really busy, and then started going again late January.
Yeah, okay.
So I guess, yeah, I skipped a couple of the winter months, but January, February, and Storm Hannah was still terrible.
Oh yeah. Brilliant, Mike. What aspect of training did you focus on the most while preparing for your event, and what time of year did you build in the most amount of training?
So I also signed up kind of as soon as it opened up. I live in London, so no real easy access to hills. So I kind of focused on just kind of easy mileage, kind of low heart rate, just kind of slowly building up my distance. On my weekends, I'd just get out to local trails mostly, kind of trying to practice as much as I could with the kit I'd be using on race day. And then also, as I got nearer to the event, probably in the springtime, was getting over to Wales to Recce the actual days, practice moving at kind of cut-off pace, just to give myself the comfort that I could go at that speed.
And I was just going to say, Mike, this image that we have here, when I'm asking you about what aspect of training and preparation did you focus on, you also did a lot of preparing in terms of administration, and I've got other lists of yours to show folks. So you obviously did a lot of kind of admin prep as well as all your practical fitness and recce.
Yeah, I quite like the planning element of things. So I have spreadsheets for everything. So I made this, like, one of these for each day that I had laminated in my pack, so I knew kind of what time I wanted to be at each checkpoint. I had lists of things I wanted to do every morning, every lunchtime, and every evening.
Are you selling these? Do you have a price that you will produce these for? Could we order them for you?
I'm happy to send them to anyone who would like them. But it was, kind of pretty straightforward things, to be honest, on the list. No magical wisdom, just like the assumption that I'd be a complete zombie and not able to think for myself. So, eat your dinner, drink a lot, sort your feet out.
I think I've got that one coming up.
Okay, it's going to be slightly embarrassing, probably.
So Bo, can you remember kind of a high and a low experience from your event? Can you remember what days they were on, if they were on particular days? Or
yeah, well, day 4 was a really interesting run for me because it was a high followed by a low almost immediately. So I think because day 3 is famously when Shane always says that's when, if you pass day 3, you've got the finish, you can smell the finish line, and lots of people will actually finish. So I started day 4 with quite a lot of, like, a big smile on my face and basically lots of optimism. And I think about a third into the day, it was still in the morning, there's this lovely gravel track, and it's just slightly downhill. It's near all these wind farms. It's not really that scenic, but it's just slightly downhill. And I was literally just running like 5-6 minute kilometers, which, during this ultra is pretty fast. And I was just like feeling really good. It was by myself and just like really quiet forest. It was probably pretty much a high point. And then at the end of this gravel track, it turned into a tarmac road, and I started like feeling a bit of a niggle, and then that niggle turned into a hobble, and that hobble turned into a hobble walk, and that hobble walk turned into like absolute agony. In every stream I came by, I was like putting my like shin, who was like inflamed, in the ice cold water, and I was like, what have I done? I shouldn't have ran so fast.
Oh,
but yeah, at the support point, the physio actually sorted me out with some tape, which was the magic tape, and I managed to get through it. But it was like this low point where I was like, I have 100 kilometers to go to the finish. How am I ever going to hobble 100 kilometers?
Oh, but
you can get through it.
Yeah, you obviously did, and you looked after those legs for the last couple of days. So well
yeah,
done.
I think on my finishing photo you see quite a lot of tape on them.
Did notice that,
yeah, that was that hobble.
And for yourself, Mike, high and low?
I think it's quite a lot of high points, really. I enjoyed, the vast majority of it. I think one of the key things that stands out is that kind of start line in the castle with the choir. So you've kind of watched it on all of the videos, and then actually standing there and listening to it. I think I said to you before, Kate, like, even just thinking about it now gives me goosebumps. And probably the other high is just the kind of people you link up with on the route, and just chatting to new people for hours as you kind of work your way across Wales together is a real high. A low point, similar to Bo, actually, day 4 towards the end, I ended up on my own for kind of hours, and it just felt like forever getting into that final campsite. I kept expecting to see the lights over the next little bend, and just it did never seem to come.
Mike, is this day 4 with the 6 mile road section at the end?
Yes.
Excuse me while I just puke into my bucket. Oh no.
And it was actually the little bit just before that road section that really kind of broke me. It's kind of not a very big, but off-road kind of traversey, awkward section. And it just kind of, it wrecked me really. But then, and so I got to the campsite kind of pretty dead on my feet, but had like a really nice volunteer just look after me. Probably got 3 or 4 hours sleep thinking, how am I going to finish day 5? But actually woke up and just amazingly just managed to keep on going. So I guess that would be the message, just no matter how bad you feel, it's amazing what you can carry on doing.
Yeah, you both finished from, and from coming through those experiences. That's awesome. If you entered the Dragon's Back race again, which you might do, what 2 things might you do differently during the event second time around? I've said 2 things, and I've said might, because actually you might not do anything differently, and I've just said a couple.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually I would do things in my training a little bit differently. So originally my plan was like really ramping up loads and loads of miles, and I got myself definitely overtrained and really tired. Ended up having like quite bad anemia even. So I think that I would do that differently, because the race was harder than it should have been, because my body wasn't ready for it because I'd prepared it too much. How silly. Yeah. So I wouldn't do that again. And then just like during the race, I don't really ever use tape. I'm always a bit like, it's fine. I'm a bit allergic to it, and whatever. And then I ended up needing it really badly. So I would have taken more of it.
Okay, that's
enough of that like stretchy tape is magic.
Brilliant. So we're all going to be looking for bulk deals on
tape.
Yeah. And when you said about that you felt you trained too much, what kind of load were you putting onto yourself at your peak kind of training times then? Can you remember?
Well, I was doing like a Recce weekend almost every weekend, which was a full day but spread over 2 days, plus probably about 4 weekday runs, and they were all between 5 and 10k. They're not massive, but with full-time work, the driving to Wales, the fact that you have to eat lots and have to prep all of that food, I mean, there wasn't enough time in a day. So I think it's a bit of a combination of all of those things, like look after yourself,
life lots,
eat really well, eat enough. And all of those things, they're also really important, not just the miles that you do.
Yeah, and we're all fitting in that training in and amongst life in general, whatever our lives might be. Yeah, so it's a big ask, isn't it? Yourself, Mike, might you do anything differently, like before or during the event?
I probably would have liked to have done a little bit more training. I probably just didn't quite get enough miles in, so it meant my days were very, very long. I think I look back and I think I was out for nearly 80 hours on the whole thing, so I could have done with just a couple more hours sleep a night, so maybe being slightly fitter.
And what hours might you have been doing on a day then? Do you remember?
Probably about 16 hours a day, I think, so pretty much out first thing and back pretty late in the day generally. It was okay, but it was fairly arduous.
That's a long time out on your feet, with not a lot of recoup time in the evenings. And anything that you might do differently during the event?
Just one thing in terms of like just not trying new things in the event. So I had this kind of recovery powder, and I'd used it after a single long run prior to the event, but I'd never used it and then run the next day, and it just basically didn't really agree with me too well. So I won't go into detail, but
good advice there from you both. Thank you. So here's another one of your lists, Mike. I believe this is on loan as well, is it? So actually let's start with you, Mike. what became your top golden rule when camping each night, or was it all of this?
Yeah, I had these beautiful lists I made at home. Obviously, some slightly basic things in there like get changed, but yeah, that quickly went to pot on probably day 2 or 3. Essentially, just became, eat some food as soon as you get in, rehydrate yourself, and just look after your feet. Really. I also did try and pack my bag the night before, just because it kind of helped just to get up and grab it. But yeah.
Brilliant.
No kind of rollering, massages, none of that.
Oh, but the intention was there, and at least you had some kind of cues so that when you got in, you had. Did you? I forget now. Did you say you wrote them on your bag, or it was on these lists?
I had like a little laminate. Each of these was a little laminated thing. So in my drop bag, I had the little drop bag list. So I'd go through and be like, okay, charge my watch, eat your food, sort your feet, change my socks if I need to. So just giving me that nothing to think about on the race. The other thing I did before, I didn't mention earlier, is I kind of had a little bag for each half day with all my food in for the day. So at the beginning of the day, I just grabbed my kind of Tuesday morning bag, put my Tuesday afternoon bag in my drop bag, and it just meant I didn't think, do I want 4 bars or 6 bars or I don't, just no thinking.
Were those bags all the same? What if you mixed up kind of Tuesday and Thursday? Would that have been like game over?
That would have been okay.
And Bo, golden rules for camping. Did you kind of live by some?
Ooh, efficiency for me, because I knew that I was going to be on the like slower end of the scale, and I also just wanted to have enough sleep every night, and that's really hard. Like if the cutoffs are the way that they are, and you want to start like early in the morning, if you're starting at 6, you have to get up at 5, right? So that is a short night's sleep. So what I would do is I'd be really efficient, just like Mike. I'd packed all of my food into separate bags, like clear plastic bags, and they would say morning, day 2, afternoon, day 2, and that would go into my drop bag, that would go into my running backpack. But I did the same thing with my clothes. So I gave myself a clean set of clothes for every day, and I would put them like next to my pillow. And if I'd wake, sometimes I'd even sleep in the clean clothes already. So I'd just wake up and just go. And that just made everything so much easier. I had some of my tent buddies, I heard them rustling around with their backpack all the time and their head torch on, and I was like, I'm so happy I just have to blow up my mattress, put the sleeping bag down and fall asleep.
And had you acquired that pattern and that kind of routine through kind of other camping trips in your life, or you just imagined how that's what you wanted to do for the Dragon's Back race, or did you sort of create that routine for yourself during Recce or
some other ultras that I've done? I've like been really like keen on packing, and I'm always quite disciplined. Like I eat every hour when doing a long distance run. And whenever some of my friends come for like a long run, it's their first long run, I'm like, we're eating every hour. This is the rule. So I think I may be quite strict with those things because I know that they work for me. I have done not like a multi-day ultra, but some like multi-day like weekend runnings with my friends. So I knew kind of how to pack for the next day, but then we were not that much in a rush. So I guess it just came out of me being worried and over-prepared.
Yeah.
Over-prepared is good.
Yeah, those are really good tips. And sleeping in clean clothes to get up the next day. Yeah, I have done that on expeditions and stuff as well. So there's nothing bad about kind of sleeping in clean pants, clean clothes to get up. That could be a good strategy. Yeah, nice one. Fab. So I just want to look at that lovely list again. Look at those, brilliant. I think you're in good company, Mike, because I do remember speaking to Jim Mann on one of the events that I crewed on, and he had also done similar and written stuff in big permanent marker on the outside of his dry bag. So exactly like yourself, like I need to do these 5 things when I get into camp when I'm feeling boxed. So yeah, think about that. I think that's a good thing. So you may have covered a little bit of this. So over to you, Bo. what kind of types of food, drink did you kind of consume during the day or the end of the day? So you regularly ate through the day, like every half an hour to an hour. Any favorite bits of food?
I quite like savory things. So I had like little cheese strings, some like mini salami thingies. I had things like Mars bars always go down all right. Just general muesli bars, whatever you like. I like chocolate, lots of chocolate. And for the last 5K, always get some Haribo, a good little pick-me-up. I developed a bit of a habit of eating whole mozzarella balls when training for Dragon's Back. So just like get a whole mozzarella ball, it's already in a package, and then you just rip it open, you pour out the water, and it's just such lovely, calorific, salty, gooey, low on flavor, everything you want.
Brilliant. Okay.
I know it sounds disgusting, but don't judge it until you tried it.
Yeah. Okay. And imagine kind of pairing that with, just some salty meat. It'd be like, oh, like being at a deli. It'd be amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
And was there anything that you craved or really benefited from at the end of your days that you particularly packed, or were you obviously just making good use of all the food available at camp, etc.?
Yeah, I packed like a sort of like a chocolate milk proteiny shake. I think it was Mountain Fuel. Actually, Lisa, my friend, made it for me every night because she was always in camp before me because she won the race. Well, I mean,
oh, she's a good friend though.
Good friend. So I would come into camp and she'd be like, "Do you want your shake?" And she'd be like making this like chocolate milk kind of shake, and made sure that I drank that always when coming into camp, because you sometimes don't really want to eat. You're just tired, and tired and eating is not handy. So just getting some protein in.
Yeah,
really
get that in like maybe within your 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Exactly. So whilst I was undoing my shoes and sorting my feet out, I could just sip that, and you're rehydrating and you're refueling at the same time.
Brilliant. Anything similar, different for yourself, Mike? Food and drink that you liked during the day or at the end of the day?
Very similar to Bo, really. I was quite religious about eating kind of every 30 minutes to an hour. I quite like the savoury food as well. It just goes down better for me. But having a bit of a mixture, having some sweet bits so I could just have what I felt like, I think that was good. Again, just stuff I'd eaten before on runs, and practicing eating that regularly in your training as well is important, I think. So you get used to running and eating.
And both of you, are you consumers of gels or anything similar?
I'm not a big
fan. They're quite heavy because they've got liquid in. Says the person who eats mozzarella balls, but okay.
I'm not sure our weight limit will account for the amount of mozzarella balls this year.
There is a shop on day 3. And I actually went to the effort of recceing the shop so that I would know exactly where all my favorite snacks were in the supermarket.
Okay, I'm getting a good impression of you both. Very meticulously organised. Go and recce the spa in Recce.
Yes.
Brilliant. Okie doke. So, another list. This is Mike's bag list. So not only is this just the mandatory kit list, this is kind of everything. Mike did allow me to share these, by the way. It's fine. Everything that was in Mike's bag. So to Mike, what was your most useful or well-loved kind of bit of kit or food during your event? Maybe bit of kit, let's say.
I think it's come up earlier. The poles for me were my essential piece of kit, really. So I'd use them in a lot of my training, and I really strongly believe they work well for me. So both on the uphills, giving you, being able to use your arms as well as your legs to help you, and then also it helps just reduce the impact on your legs on the downhills. I mean, I know they're not for everybody, but that for me, they were my essential thing.
And you trained with them as well. You practiced with them, so they became your friends.
Yeah, they did. I think one thing to be careful of with the poles is they can kind of discourage you from eating because you've got a pole in your hand. So being kind of mindful that you still need to keep eating.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. And how to, map pole food.
Yeah.
All of that faff. So getting used to that faff, isn't it? And what about yourself, Bo?
My most well-loved item, probably poles. I just really love them. I've got some, what is it, Mountain
King?
Mountain King, yeah. And they're just like not very expensive. They're really easy to put down. They're really light. And I just thought that they were great. And I could really, like, when you're just kind of really tired and you're almost rolling over your ankle, they just saved me so many times from an ankle sprain.
Yeah, okie doke. Yeah, so hearing that's come through quite a bit of the chat this evening, hasn't it? Kind of poles really beneficial. So if anyone's wondering, it's kind of now's the time to kind of borrow some, use some, get some, and start practicing with them. Yeah,
I would say so, definitely.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So last question to you both. So to yourself, Mike, first. So if you were to meet yourself on the start line again, what would you whisper in your ear as a word of advice?
I think probably just kind of like know you can make it round, kind of, even if you're feeling pretty low at points, they'll pass and you'll feel better. And then, even an hour later, you're suddenly running again and you might not believe it at the time. So just knowing that you'll get through it.
This too shall pass. Is that
That's the one, yeah.
in your head? much like our current climate, this too shall pass. And yourself, Bo?
Oh, well, you sent me these questions beforehand, but I didn't actually really know the answer. Probably something to like give me a bit more confidence. I think I was really insecure about whether or not I could finish. And maybe actually that was good though, because it meant that I was like a couple hours before the cutoff every single time. I think a bit of insecurity actually pushes me. So I probably wouldn't want to say that, because then maybe I would have been a bit lazy. I would have not made it.
Bo, I get the impression that you would never be lazy.
My partner just heard that and snorted.
The last session that we did this online, and we had some other runners very kindly gave us their time, Dan and Megan, and I remember, well, Dan also said to keep moving forward and keep making progress. Whatever stage you're at, even if you're crawling, just keep crawling forward. And Megan wished that she could just tell herself to enjoy it a bit more. So, and she was very well prepared, like yourself, very conscientious, probably similar to yourself, Bo, but she wished she'd allowed herself to enjoy it a bit more, in the early stages of the race.
Yeah, I think that's probably quite right. I think I didn't even really chat that much in the early stages, but as the week went on, I started talking to people around me more and started relaxing more, and the enjoyment definitely came, even though the pain increased.
But I suppose it's very easy with hindsight to kind of review these things, but I think there's some golden advice. So thank you. There you go. Thanks, Bo, Mike.
I didn't get any tick bites. No.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
I'm just reading some questions in the chat.
Yeah,
right.
I was just about to. I wanted to come back to the chat box because, we've got a few more minutes. We can kind of mop up some questions. Either Bo and Mike might be able to kind of jot a few answers in the chat box. I will just have a look at the chat box now to see what we've got. And if you've got any queries, you can pop them in there. It would be really nice to have a bit of a throw about, but we all know from our year of Zoom that having too many voices online just goes a bit bonkers. Have I let me know, Bo and Mike, if I've missed any questions that have come in here.
Is there a facility to dry kit overnight and charge electronic devices? So the short answer to that is no. I carried actually quite a large sort of battery pack, but my phone just went on aeroplane mode during the day, and that meant it basically didn't really drain any batteries. What is the best thing is Dragon Mail. So what was really helpful for sort of my own peace of mind was my family and friends could send me dragon mail and I could read it and be really motivated by all their messages, but I didn't have to send anything back. Imagine like having that like 5 hours of sleep in the evening and then spending half an hour WhatsApping people. And then they start like WhatsApping you back and then you don't sleep. So just say to everyone, send me dragon mail and don't look at your phone.
Yeah.
Your watch can be charged from a small battery pack, it'll be fine.
Yeah. Bo, I think that's actually really sane advice, because we all know probably how much time we bleed into our mobile phones in normal life, and maybe this week of our life is like the one and only time that we can actually remove ourselves from that. Yes, we will have our mobile phones on us, watches, GPS devices, but like you say, maybe we don't have to be on them, you know, Facebook living all the time, because A, it will drain our batteries, and B, we won't be in the event, will we? Yeah, we'll be online. So that's a really good point. Mike, thank you for answering kind of questions that have appeared in the chat. Anything else that I've missed that you might have seen, Mike? I think you've answered a few. That's grand.
I think someone's saying organization and preparation clearly trumps speed on this event. And I think that's a really good take-home message. Like, even if you can't get to the hills right now, even if you think that you haven't prepared enough or you can't get to the Recce's, like you can do all of the lists that Mike just showed, and you can get all of that time saving there, and you will be like 5 steps ahead of most of the other competitors.
Yeah, that's really sound advice. And interestingly, I mean, I'm coming at this with various sets of experiences. I'm running the Dragon's Back Recce events, but I'm also entering as a participant. So I've got lots of work to do in that sense. Loving Mike's lists. I'm glad you sent those to me, Mike, because I'm going to look them. So yeah, I agree, and we've all been a bit kind of COVIDed out this year, haven't we? And no one has got out and about as much as they would probably like to. But I think in chatting to so many people and listening to you guys, listening to Dan and Megan last time, listening to all the chat in the Facebook participant group, it's not all about the mileage that we're kind of clunking out each week at all, actually, is it? There's so much more going on in this race that we can be preparing for and thinking about. So I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Fantastic. So if you've got any sort of logistical questions about the race itself, where can I park my car, event rules, packing, kits, etc., the Dragon's Back team are available. You'll get hold of them via the Dragon's Back website, pop them an email, or they've got a kind of live chat box there. The participants Facebook group page, if you've not sort of succumbed to that, that's a great minefield of information and banter and good fun. And if you've got any specific questions about Recce events that Raw Adventures are organising, then that's where you can come to me. My email address is there. Thanks to anyone that's already booked on Recce events, and to anyone that is thinking of, if you've got any queries, I'll be happy to help you. And if you're organising your own Recce events, just keep watching the news, keep updated with local restrictions in England and Wales. So you've got the Welsh government making different decisions to the UK government. So just kind of keep wise about those and dates coming up. Awesome. But for now, look, I'm 5 minutes over, and that's not too bad. I've done pretty well. So thanks ever so much. Thanks to Mike, thanks to Bo, and thanks to you all for coming along this evening.